Welcome to the International Institute of Legal Project Management. In this short session, we're going to be looking at the Lawyer Behavioural Profile product. Well, firstly, have you ever considered which areas of legal practice your natural behaviour style is best suited to? Would you like a better understanding on how to be most effective in your role? And would you like to know more about your current performance level? Well, this is all possible through a behavioural profile. The International Institute of Legal Project Management has a 4-phase LPM framework, and it recognises the importance around the behavioural side from leadership, interpersonal skills, legal service culture and organisational capability. The Institute has created the world's first lawyer-specific behavioural profile. It is based on the academically validated and global extended DISC system. This system is based on DISC theory. It provides over 160 different styles that you'd get a customised report, and you can do it in 50 languages. But this report is customised specifically for the law profession. After completing the 15 to 20 minute questionnaire, you'll get a customised report. And that customised report will include things like identifying what your natural behavioural style is, as well as what your adapted style. This is your perceived need to adjust. This is what you're doing in the workplace. And of course, if they look the same, you're getting the maximum out of your natural gifts. But if they look different, that would indicate some challenges that you may be having. And the good thing is it can indicate how to then turn that around or how to get to maximum performance. This report comes with a validation score so we can see how accurate it is and how consistent you've answered those questions. It also gives us an indication of your uncertainty about your role, whether you're feeling secure or insecure about your role, whether there's a sense of frustration currently in your workplace, and also things like your stress indicators and tips on increasing your performance. To understand the theory of DISC, let's go back and look at the work of lawyer and psychologist Professor William Moulton Marsden, who was a professor of psychology in Harvard University. He actually created a book called The Emotions of Normal People back in 1928 and recognized that there was these 4 dominating traits. Coining the term DISC, he recognized people could have one of these traits 2 up to 3 compared to others. He referred to them as D being dominance, which we more refer these days as being driven or dominant. He referred to the I's as being inducement, which we refer to as influences. He said the S's were submission, which we refer to as wanting more stability or security. And he referred to the C as being compliance, which effectively is people that want to be more compliant or more correct. Now, based on these 4 things, driver, influence, stable and compliant, it's interesting to note that he wasn't the first one to recognize these 4 traits. In fact, Hippocrates, the father in modern medicine, and people like Empedocles, going back 2,500 years in our history, we've recognized that these 4 dominating traits. The Chinese system, particularly in a book called the I Ching, refer to 8 traits called the Bagua. And when you look at this diagram, you can see the 4 squares for this model, but if you look closely, you'll be able to see that there's also 8 triangles, which means that both systems were correct. So the I Ching dates back 3,000 years. So it's interesting to note that the human race has recognized that there's these 4 or 8 dominating traits going back over 3,000 years. As a quick overview, D-type people are very fast-moving. They want things yesterday. They're very clear on their goals. They're very ambitious. They want control, and they often move up the corporate ladder quite fast. The influencer style is very good at connecting with people. They build networks fast. They're very good at business development and connecting and bringing work into the law firm. The S-style people are very much about stability. They bring that predictability, that stableness to the law firm. And of course, the C means compliant. These are very rule-bound, very focused on detailed and information, and they certainly know what's right or wrong. By the nature of legal work, it's interesting to note that a lot of lawyers will be either compliant or stable. But often you'll find the D's are running the law firm and the I's are sitting in the business development roles. But it's better to understand how all this works. There is a cheats way of looking at this. Dr. Marsden said there were some people that were more passive and some people that were more active. Carl Jung used the terms introvert and extrovert. So what they found that the D and I are far more extrovert orientated. And if you know you're a high extrovert just means that they like to be connected with people, they get energy with people, they want to be around people. Therefore, the highest extrovert is the influencer style. So the opposite to the highest extrovert is the compliant C, who is the most introvert style. So the C and S's are far more introvert, and the D and I's are far more extrovert. Then we can look at what's called complementary blends. What we have found is the D's and C's are far more task-focused people, where the I and S's are far more people-focused people. This starts explaining why there's no universal common sense, because the D's and C's will look down at the others and say it's just common sense. It's step 1, 2, 3. It's ABC, just common sense. So they very much base their common sense on process and task. Whereas the people at the other end, the S and I, they'll be basing on their common sense around people. And they'll look at others and say, you just can't treat people like that. It's just common sense. You can't do that. So hence you can see that the concept of common sense comes from behavioural styles. It also tells us that whoever's your opposite can annoy the hell out of you until you understand what their value is. Because when you overdo your strengths, like a D is very much about get on, get it done, push, push, push. But if they do that too much, they'll be taking too many things on. Balls can be being dropped. They can become arrogant. And therefore they need the S who will slow them down somewhat. Because the S likes comfort zones. And they want to be assured that it's right before they'll come along with you, which means they can slow things down. But of course, if they slow things down too much, they become resistant to change. So it's the D that helps them get out of their comfort zone. Equally, the C's are very compliant people, very driven, often lone rangers, happy to work on themselves and get into the detail. And they may be lacking the social connectivity which the I's will bring. So you can see that when we go over our strengths, it becomes a weakness. So it's a matter of actually knowing what your strengths are and how to play them. So that's the important part of having a behaviour profile. It tells you what your strengths are and then indicates whether you're overplaying them or underplaying them. Given that we can have 1, 2 or up to 3 of these behavioural blends, it is the proof that we were born to be in teams, and hence the person that annoys the hell out of you is often the one that you need the most. Or whatever they bring is what you need to actually increase your performance. Let's take, for example, if you're an SC or a CS combination, which is a typical style for a lawyer, they are often very good at what they do, they're very talented, they're very analytical and intelligent. But the opposite to the CS is the DI. These are the people with the highest profiles, which indicates to us that a lawyer may be very good at what they do, but they'll only be known to people around them. They'll typically not have a LinkedIn profile or have it very populated. And when you look at it, that can hold them back from attracting work because they're very good at what they do, but people just don't know about them. So when we look at who our opposite is, they annoy the hell out of us, but they actually teach us the most about what we can be lacking in our style. Now when it comes to the reports, it's going to show 2 great diagrams. The one on the right there will actually be coloured, and the top colour there actually indicates where your point of flow is. Now flow is where you do things easier, faster, more effective, which effectively is shown in the diagrams on the left side when your natural style and your adapted style is what you're doing in the workplace, your perceived need to adjust, when they look the same, you're in flow. So the diagram on the right shows where your hot spot is, your flow point. And when you're in flow, we call that from a neuroscience point of view using least energy. So therefore, you're having more fun. You can do things easier, faster, and more effectively, and with more fun than if you're playing anything away from your natural style. The next shades of colour tell us what you've developed compared to what you could develop. And that means in having a profile, you could even ask me which roles or which training would be better suited to you, and we go back and look at the colouring of this chart. Now the diagrams on the left side actually indicate what your natural style is, so that's your potential, compared to on the left hand side your adapted style. And you can see here they're effectively underplaying their strengths. And each movement of each style gives us a story, and when we look at the total movement, that also allows us to get a greater story and more insight to what's actually happening in your workplace. That's why this report also comes with an option of actually having a debrief. In the debrief, we'll also tell you about your blind spots, your fear sensitivities, those things that unduly influence your thinking, so there's a lot more information you can get from the debrief. But to give you one example, you can see here their top key strengths. They are an SCI, which is the highest traits they have, and hence why their blue spot on the right-hand diagram is in that S quadrant. Now, as a whole, that SCI profile is being underplayed, which means that this person is not bringing their best self to the workplace. But each of them have a meaning. For example, if the C goes down, as we can see here, your natural style compared to what they're playing, the C is actually lower than the natural style. That indicates that there's 3 reasons. So reason 1, they're actually not in a technical job, and that's typically not the case for a lawyer because your job is technical based. The second reason is it could be mundane. You can do it with your eyes closed. We call that disengaged. So we could then look at your work environment and where you're at to with your attitude, and that will give us an idea if it's that at play. Well, the third one is you're just not using your intellect to the capabilities you can. And often that can become the case where we can then say exactly what do you have to do in the workplace to actually bring it back up to your maximum natural style. And when you're in flow, that's when things are far more fun and you're using less energy, so you're feeling more energized. So in summary, these behavior styles tell us exactly what's happening, and through the debrief, we can tell you exactly what you need to do to get into maximum performance. And you may know this, that some parts of your job aren't going so well, or you may be dealing with stress. Well, these reports give us an indication of exactly what's happening. So some of the benefits is you'll get access to understand what your natural behavioural style is. That means you know what you should be doing, and it also can indicate what areas of law you should be practicing in. The adapted style tells us what's actually happening, so it can validate how you're feeling or whether you're actually bringing your best self to the job. It gives you another understanding of your role and what opportunities you may take up and how you can position yourself. It tells you things like your comfort level of your current employment, so it can give you some feedback on how you're finding your current role. And also things like frustration, stress indicators, but it goes into the whole details on how you identify others, how you communicate with them, what's the do's and don'ts, so it can improve your performance with everyone else around you, particularly your clients and your work colleagues. So from a neuroscience point of view, you're born with a natural behavioural style. We call this your growth potential. But to get it into flow, that means you would have had to put time, effort and energy to develop the skills. Just as you have done, you've gone and got a law degree, then you've developed yourself in a particular legal practice area, and hopefully you've become an expert or a master. In fact, it was Malcolm Gladwell, international bestseller, in a book called The Outliers, which recognised high performance tended to have the 10,000 hour rule, as he called it. Meaning, you had to have 10,000 hours of dedicated time, effort, energy and focus and practice to become a master or an expert at something, which on this diagram we're referring to as flow. This means that flow is not natural. Flow is when you're developing your natural behavioural style. Now imagine if we can show you your natural behaviour style, indicate which areas of law you're going to be best suited to, we could accelerate your success. But by having a profile, you get to see at what level you're currently operating in your flow. And neuroscience says when you're operating in flow, you're using the least energy. That's why when you do things that you absolutely love to do, you realise the time goes very fast and you're really enjoying it. You're kind of captured in the moment. That's the evidence of flow. But if you're going home and you're not doing extra rosters or long hours, etc., but you're just going home exhausted, you may be in the opposite of flow, which we call ebb. Now, ebb means it's going to take a lot of energy. It's just going to be hard work. Flow is like swimming down the current, whereas ebb is trying to swim against the current. And if you persist through that because you don't know your behaviour style, you may become somewhat proficient at your work, so there will be a level of competency. But how many people do you know that are kind of good at their job, but they just don't like their job, which means that passion. Because what we have found is when you're in flow, you're bringing your passion out. So we would welcome you to take the opportunity to get a behaviour profile and find out exactly more about yourself so you can accelerate yourself and check in on what level of performance you're currently enjoying. You have the option then to have a face-to-face or online debrief where they can go into the absolute detail on what each of those movements mean and how do you get into high performance. The Institute wants to support lawyers working at their best so they bring the best to their legal practice but also to their clients. We hope this is an opportunity for you not only to get insights about yourself but what others around you are and how better to communicate and engage with them. This leads to a more successful and happy life.